Thank you, Meg. All right, so great to see everybody on camera now. Welcome everybody to our panel. I'm really excited to have Marcy, Dana, and Roselle with me here today to talk about their startup journeys, which, as you'll hear about, will often take many different routes. They can take many different shapes. And so I'd love to just start by just learning more from each of you how you came to start your business and how you came to Hearst Lab. How did you hear about Hearst Lab? Marcy, why don't you go first?
Sure. So, how I started my business, I was an attorney for the New York Mets baseball team, the parent company, Sterling Equities. And just a few weeks after I started, the Bernie Madoff scandal broke and the company lost $500 million and almost the entire 401k of the company. So I rapidly became an expert in financial exploitation when I worked on that financial fraud for about 8 years as Associate General Counsel. And at the same time, my elderly aunt was aging in her home and she was struggling with this issue of managing her household bills. And when I researched the overlap of those issues, I learned that elder financial exploitation was a $1 billion annual problem in this country, often perpetrated because individuals needed help managing their bills. And so I left Sterling to work on silver bills full time. And I actually met Lisa Burton of the Hearst Lab several years prior to being anywhere near ready for funding. And we just kept in touch over the years. We met at an event that was called Project W, sponsored by Davis Wright Tremaine, a law firm that helps female founders. And when she reached out to me in the fall, it was at the beginning of the fundraising process, and it just proceeded from there. So very grateful to Lisa for maintaining that connection, and it was several years in the making.
Thank you, Marcy. I think there's a good nugget in there about how it's never too early to begin building those relationships with potential partners and investors, even when you're not quite thinking about fundraising just yet. Dana, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, sure. So I was in traditional market research for about 5 years. And I was a qualitative researcher, which meant I was moderating focus groups and doing very manual product testing. I spent far too many hours in grocery stores saying, hey, wait, stop right there, try this new beverage or try this new snack. And I realized that we were working with some of the biggest CPGs in the world, and there was just not a more easy, efficient, scalable, cost and time efficient way of getting product testing off the ground. So I left that very stable life and job in traditional agency side and left for business school. So I went to business school where I met my co-founder, Ethan Kello, and together we really built the business from the ground up. We we raised back in the fall, and we thought that we were, kind of closing out our round and done with fundraising. And then we heard about Hearst Lab and the incredible sort of community it's built and the resources there, and just the offering that being a part of the Hearst Lab community has really built up through Chanel Fields, who's another Hearst Lab founder who also went to the Wharton School. And so through Chanel, met Lisa, met Chris, met the whole Hearst Lab team, and really actually extended the round size to make sure that we can be a part of the family. So it was a fun surprise ending to our fundraise, and we haven't looked back.
Great. And Roselle, let's finish off the question with you.
Yeah, sure. So like Marcy and Dana, I came up with the idea for Key Caliber because I was experiencing the pain point personally in my role at the Executive Office of the President. And so when you are a cybersecurity defender, you are always trying to figure out how you can improve because you know fully well that the attackers are always upping their game. And so what I wanted to build was a technology that enabled that in a more automated and continuous way, by starting with just the initial pillar of what you need to build out a security program, and that is knowing what's really important. So that was a challenge that I had in my role at the Executive Office of the President. And obviously, when you don't know what's really critical, it's pretty nerve-wracking. And I will say, when I was in my role, I was very nervous every single day that there would be a major breach that would be front page news. That did not happen under my watch, but it did happen months after I left. So it was a completely valid concern. And then, so in terms of getting into the Hearst Lab ecosystem. So I originally found out about Hearst Lab through the Hearst CIO back when I was still mulling over my idea, and I hadn't even completely formulated it. And I had looked into Hearst Lab at the time, and this was pre-COVID, and I saw that it was New York based, and that the team would have to move to New York. And I thought to myself, this seems like a phenomenal program, but I'm not moving to New York right now, so probably won't work. And then back in the late fall or early winter of 2020, one of the Hearst Lab scouts reached out to me on LinkedIn. It's Christy, who's based in Netherlands. I don't know how she even found me. And she reached out to me, and we started talking, and she was saying, yeah, well, now it's a virtual program. So then it became feasible. So if there's like a silver lining in all of the terribleness that's happened from COVID, it's like for Key Caliber, we're very fortunate that we were able to take part in this program. And we're new to the fold, but really appreciative and enjoying it so far.
That's great. So each of you kind of touched upon the fundraising journey, and in terms of how you came to Hearst Lab. I'm curious what sort of advice or lessons you might be able to share with the Power to Fly community for those who may be also in the early stages of kicking off their business, or who may be thinking about how they might fundraise down the road. What pearls of wisdom might you share with them?
I think I'm happy to hop in. I think to Marcy's point, and really to Roselle's point around how they found Hearst Lab, and the nugget you pulled out earlier, it's never too early to start having conversations. And they don't have to be, we are going to be fundraising, or we are thinking about fundraising, but just get your name out there. And then more importantly, find a sort of way to get a lay of the land and feel confident that when it is time to raise, you have those folks to go to. And then I think what was really, really valuable for us in our raise was really going to other founders that were just one step ahead of us and asking about recent experiences, and really asking the questions that you can't just Google. There's a lot of advice out there around how to think about valuation, or how much to raise, or what you should write in your cold email, but there's nothing like someone who knows you, who will give you unfiltered advice, and who has just been through it in a similar environment. So that was really key to really feeling confident in our approach, and getting some sort of directional insight into how we should think about, all the different steps in the fundraising journey.
And Roselle, as a second-time founder, what have you learned along the way? How is it different for you this time around? If it is different, I'd be curious to get your insights on that.
Oh yeah, it's completely different second time around. So first time around, you're just getting into the swing of it, and you never want to not follow a lead. And so whenever there's any potential to talk to an investor, you just jump on that opportunity. At least that was my experience the first time around. This time around, I'm far more selective, and selective on multiple levels. So I will due diligence before I even accept an intro to make sure the company invests in enterprise, that the VC invests in enterprise companies. Because if they don't even have that understanding, it's not going to be a good fit. Certainly you have to check, make sure that there are no competitors in their portfolio. Making sure that the check size is right and the amount of traction that they usually want to see before you talk to them is right. All of those items I didn't think about quite so much, if at all, with the first, with my first startup. It was just, okay, I have the opportunity to have an intro, oh, I'm going for it. And that ends up taking up a ton of time. And as a CEO of a small startup, you don't have extra time. And so this time around, I've been far more selective for that reason. And also just from a personality fit perspective. There's some investors that are just not going to be a great personality fit, or for some other reason, just you don't connect with them. And you're going to be working closely with them for a number of years. And so this time around, I've definitely disqualified a number of potential investors just because I didn't think that the fit was there. I didn't think we were on the same wavelength. I didn't think that we would be able to work well or interact well together. So yeah, very, very different this time around.
Marcy, continuing along that same theme, what are your thoughts on how to prioritize meetings with investors and make sure that you use your time wisely? Because it is such a huge spend on your time.
Yeah, I think it's a really, really good question. And I'm a first-time founder, so I really didn't have the luxury of saying no to a lot of people. I think that and when I think of who invested ultimately, what I think is very interesting is that one of the earliest people that reached out to me, I knew right away it wasn't the right fit. They were they were investing in they're writing much larger check sizes, much later stages. And I said that to them in their email when they reached out to me. And they said, it's okay, we just want to, meet you. So I was kind of reluctant because I knew what a time intensive process this was, but I met with them and they actually ended up introducing me to someone who wrote the perfect check size and participated in the round. So, I think so much of it, like so much of life, is luck. And, but I think you can actually increase your luck as a first-time founder, if that's what you're asking, by really just maximizing those conversations. Someone at the beginning said to me, try to view this as your full-time job until you close the round. Like honestly, it's not only is the time, but the preparation for every meeting and just the emotional roller coaster you're on is very, intensive. And you want to try to shrink that amount of time that you're doing that. But you also need to be in it all in. So have your team prep for that you're not going to be really as available, and try to be organized about it as much as possible with some kind of either CRM or whatever your process is. And also have some champions. Like that really was critical for me, was finding someone or a couple of people who really just believed in it, were on board, were making the introductions, were giving me the pep talks, had been through it themselves. And that really made a difference. So, that's really critical too, I think.
Really like the idea of asking for help. And also when people, VCs are often, there's a trope of, let me know how I can be helpful. I think it's a great example of when they say that, actually take them up on that and ask them for that connection to somebody who might be a better fit for you. You never know what that may actually add to your journey. So there is a question from the audience. Pamela asked, what percentage of investor you used are male versus female? So I think Pamela's asking about either the ones that you approached that are male versus female, or potentially just on your cap table, your general approach to that. What are your thoughts on that?
So how many on the cap table? When she says female, though, does she mean like exclusively female investors?
Yeah, I think that's what she's referring to. Yeah, so female.
So what would Hurst be considered? I'm not sure. Hurst is,
Well, we are a mixed gender investing team, to be
that's true.
fair. So I would kind of step back and think about it from the perspective of, these days, a lot of female founders are more focused on wanting diversity in their cap table. So maybe another way to answer this is, how do you think about diversity on your cap table? Is that something you focus on? Is that something you optimize for? Or not necessarily, but you hope that it can be diverse? That's one way to answer that question.
I mean, I think that definitely that was a goal of mine. I wanted, female investors on my cap table. I think the reality and just all the data shows, and there's just so many studies that are so discouraging about, VC dollars that go to female founders. I think it's like, I heard this week at another event I was at that only 1% of fintech investment goes to female founders. So, that's kind of the flip side of it. But I mean, I definitely pitch to a lot of female investors. I don't have any exclusive female investors on the cap table.
Yeah. Dana, how about you?
Yeah, so I mentioned that we extended the round to get Hearst Lab in, and that was a big driver behind it. We have 4 institutional VCs participated in our pre-seed, and the 3 that had signed prior to Hearst Lab had all been male-owned and dominantly male investment teams. I would say, and then when we were in conversations with Hearst Lab, I had a frank conversation with Ethan, who was in total alignment, and said, it's really nice to have an investor that really emphasizes and even if it is a mixed gender team, it's very mission aligned in ensuring that there is inclusivity and access and opportunity for female founders, and is female focused. I think when it comes to just cap table makeup, I think, of course, it's really nice to be able to say, I have a diverse set of investors. But I think that alignment can happen in many different ways. So just like with Hearst Lab, we're kind of mission and community aligned and values aligned. Our lead investor, we touch base with weekly and have incredible conversations with. Regardless of kind of gender or any sort of demographics, we found that we are just very much on the same page and have really incredible, candid, productive conversations. So we definitely look for the right fit in terms of working style, and that can come in a lot of different ways.
Yeah. And Roselle, how about you?
Yeah. So for this startup. A good portion are investors who maybe aren't female themselves, but are very much in support of female founders like Hearst Lab. And then there are others that are just a mixed team. For my previous startup, I would say maybe 10% were female. And part of that is just the nature of the industry. I certainly have not pitched to as many female investors as I have male investors. And obviously we all know the dynamics in the VC industry and the demographics. And that's even more pronounced when you get to my industry, which is cybersecurity. And so some of the investors that I talk to are investors that used to be entrepreneurs who've had successful exits. They are predominantly male in cybersecurity, and I'm hoping to change that. But as of now, that's just the reality. And so when I'm looking at who's going to be a value add investor, I don't look at it from the lens of gender or anything else related to that. I look at it from, do they understand my space? Are they going to be able to provide helpful advice? Are they going to be able to provide introductions? Are they going to be able to provide some of the other resources that I'm going to need along the way to grow the business the way that I want to? So unfortunately, I don't have a ton of female investors on the cap table thus far.
I think this speaks a lot to the fact that there is increasing interest in having more women at the check writing table at VCs and at corporate VCs as well. I think that is something that there's a lot of momentum behind, but of course, there has to be even more momentum behind that to make diversity in the cap table even more prevalent than what it is today. And certainly within Hearst Lab, while we are focused on investing solely in women-led companies, and of course we have our scouts, our women executives across the company that are actively helping and being very supportive of our portfolio companies. We also have friends of the lab who are, men around the company that are helpful. So I think that also reflects the mission alignment that you all are speaking of. So let's see. So Ben, Cindy, Lamb asked, before you reach out to the investor, what kind of preparation do you think you would like to do better? Like resources that you hope you would have known. Maybe I would zoom out from this question and ask, were there surprises along the fundraising journey that you kind of reflect on now and you know about it, but that you weren't necessarily aware of at the very start of your journey?
So I can certainly say that one of the big takeaways from all of my investor conversations is I look at an investor pitch like a trailer in a movie. And most people like the trailers for action flicks that have lots of car chases and explosions and are really flashy. And this was something I didn't understand in the early days with my last startup. And I was here thinking this would be a very profound discussion. And often it wasn't really that at all. It was gut reaction based on whether it looked like, yeah, this is a cool movie, I want to check this out. And that's based on the glitzy part of the business as opposed to really the nuts and bolts. And so if you go into these discussions with the type of pitch that's more like a trailer for a rom-com or a drama, it's just not gonna fly the same way that an action flick does. And so that was a big takeaway for me from my last experience.
That's a great analogy.
So good. I can follow up. I think I totally agree with Roselle. I think there's definitely a level of kind of energy and excitement and buildup that's required, and I think also very harder to do over Zoom, which was, I think, for all of us, the environment in which we were pitching. But I think what I wished I had known going in is, or I wish I'd told myself or had really taken to heart, was just that it is a two-way conversation. And I would have armed myself and asked more questions of the investors that we spoke to that were more just, not just, how do you support your portfolio companies, but digging into, will they actually be hands-on and support and help, and having it be not only are we a good fit for their investment, but are they a good fit for our cap table. We intentionally went in saying we want really active, engaged, in the weeds of operating with us investors. And so we asked that question with everyone who we spoke to, what are the services and offerings and value you can offer to your portfolio companies. And of course, everyone has, long lists of
Trouble hearing you.
theory. Everyone has long lists of, what they say they might do. But when it comes to reality, a few are less hands-on than you would think, I think. So just asking more questions and digging into what's the relationship going to look like post, dollars hitting the bank.
Dina, you hit upon an interesting point there, just in terms of support that you can expect from your investors. And I think we can all agree that at this early stage, all the support you can get is kind of what's ideal. What are some ways that Hearst Lab has been helpful to you and your co-founder in starting your business and growing your business?
Yeah, it's funny. I've thought about this question, and it's hard to think of a succinct answer other than, anytime we have a question, challenge, need, task, we know that we can go to the Hearst Lab community and move the ball forward on it. And it's been pretty incredible, the diversity of tasks that Hearst Lab has been really, really incredible at helping with and getting through. Anywhere from, talking through the problem together versus being pointed in the right direction versus actually having a Hearst Lab scout or chief sponsor or fellow actually come in and get hands on and do. I guess to get tactical, we're now going through procurement at some really big enterprise companies, and we're dealing with data security certifications and InfoSec teams. And, Ethan and I are looking through these documents and totally overwhelmed, but really comforted and confident by the fact that, we can reach out to the Hearst InfoSec team that we were connected to via the Hearst Lab team and get some expertise. Or we're sponsoring a conference and we're creating a video, and we wanted to level it up. And we brought in Michael Marlander, who's an amazing creative on the Hearst Lab team, who did a out of nowhere voiceover and sounded amazing. So I think just the idea that you have an army of people in your corner that are going to pinch hit whenever you need them is really confidence boosting, tactically really executionally helpful, and just on the roller coaster of entrepreneurship, just emotionally really goes a long way.
And Marcy and Rosa, I know you both are a little bit slightly newer to Hearst Lab than Dana, but not that much newer. I'm curious how you found your experience so far in terms of support.
Yeah, so we closed our deal with Hearst. Basically, it was the end of December, so let's say January, so it's been about a quarter. It's really, I think, incredible and unique for a startup to really just, although you're a small company, like you have, this huge force of Hearst behind you. So, I mean, I can't even describe the many, many ways we've gotten help from the incredible legal team. I mean, I don't just feel like I'm the sole lawyer here. I have we've interacted with, at least 7 to 10 of the lawyers have provided legal help for us in really incredible ways and helped just, I'm just thinking now and just realizing the impact that the legal team has had on so many of our issues. It's been really incredible. We had the design team, help us relaunch our entire website. And then just from the business development perspective, the introductions, just some of the ideas that we had for going to market, the scouts helping us. We have a meeting with one of them on a weekly basis trying to propel, one of our go-to-market strategies. And then, another one of the Hearst companies just helping us get, launched with some of their clients. So it's really, it's difficult to even quantify or express the depths of the help that we've gotten from Hearst. Just the big picture, I think, would be, you're a little startup, but you have like a huge company behind you, and it's hard to even express how powerful that is.
Yeah, I've only been part of the Hearst Lab Portco since end of March, so just a little over a month. But it's already been super helpful. I think it was probably the day we inked the deal that I first sent over a customer NDA to the legal team. So I've already been pinging them a number of times, been amazingly helpful. We also have one of the fellows doing a very significant amount of dev work for us right now. because our engineering team is small, and we do have lots that's coming to fruition this quarter that we really need some help on. So yeah, it's been super helpful, and just knowing that you have the ability to flex up on the engineering side, or just reach out and get quick questions asked without it costing a ton of money, and being able to go to people that you know have the talent without having to spend hours and hours looking for someone with that skill set. It's already proven to be immensely useful for us.
I love that phrase, flex up. Thank you, Roselle. Okay, so we have a question from Brandy. Brandy asks, we're all aware that women get paid less than men. There's reason to believe that extends to equity as well. How can women founders be sure they keep their fair share of equity? So another cap table related question. So I think we've got two women solo founders here, and Dana, you have a mixed gender founding team. Would love to hear your respective approaches or philosophy on this.
So I will say, I do think there have been a fair number of investors who felt that the cap on my note was too high. And had I been a guy, they probably wouldn't have felt that way. And so that's just another criteria that I use for disqualifying them. And I've been very rigid about maintaining the cap, despite the fact that I've heard that a couple of times, because I know that there is this tax on being a woman when it comes to valuations. And I'm just not going to stand for that. But it definitely is a concern, because I think there's certainly an implicit bias in some cases, not all, definitely not all, but in some cases. And so the founders have to be very cognizant of that when they're having these discussions.
I think as you go through the fundraising process and you hear all these statistics as a female founder, and especially as a first-time founder, it's very discouraging, and you can reach a level of desperation, because ultimately your job is to keep, the doors open, and you need to close your round. And that's, we had basically an informal coach who I'd met years ago who said to me, Marcy, don't worry so much about the valuation. He said, you have to raise the money. So that's one thing you do have to think about. But I think my background, just almost always being in a male-centered world has taught me to fight hard and negotiate. And, you have to do that. You have to call their bluff. You have to fight for what's yours and what's right. And that would be my best advice. And try not to be swayed by the fact that, yes, you do have to keep the doors open. There's a balancing act.
Yeah, I totally agree. There's definitely a level of confidence and putting your foot down that you need to kind of establish as you enter a room as a fundraiser. I think the other side of this question, which is like our team and the equity and options and stakes of the early employees. And I think, of course, establishing fair, equitable compensation across the team, both in terms of salary and equity, and being as consistent and standardizing to ensure that everyone, regardless of any demographics, has equal, fair, equitable pay in the company and ownership of the company has been really important to me and Ethan. We are very intentional about when we're hiring the offers that we make and giving employees choices and standardizing in bands. Even though we're a tiny company, we want to, from the get-go, establish this culture of keeping things really consistent and in the name of fairness.
Thank you all for that. That was great. Moving over just to thinking about missions and values, all of you started your companies with a very specific mission in mind, all came out of a personal experience, personal problem that you had just known firsthand. How do you think about building a business that is values and mission driven? How do you keep that going as you scale up and grow?
I mean, I think you make it clear to your team that although you're a for-profit enterprise, you're guided by, I mean, in our case, we're guided by a social mission to allow older adults to live safely and securely without being financially exploited because they need help with their bills. And we repeat that, and and everyone who joins the team understands that, and they take pride in it. And they actually, I mean, one of the best parts of my week is when we have team meetings with the account managers and how they're all really thrilled to be able to provide this really integral service to older adults who are largely ignored by technology startups in general.
Yeah, we are our tagline is a community for better products, and we always talk about how we can continue to democratize insights and data and access to data. The problem that this really was born of is one of them is that product testing is very expensive. And as we look around in our fridges in grocery stores on shelves, we can see that there are so many new products coming to market. A lot of really cool, interesting emerging brands that don't necessarily have access to tons of startup capital, but everyone deserves to learn more about what consumers think and get some really interesting insights that will help their businesses and products succeed. So we're very intentional about, of course, as a company, kind of repeating that internally, but also we have an amazing head of emerging brand partnerships named Kaylee, who drives these monthly initiatives where we do offer pro bono work to small enough brands that qualify and are mission aligned in some way. So we had in February for Black History Month, in March for Women's History Month, in April for Sustainability Month. We have handfuls of brands that we bring on and don't charge a single cent to, in trying to really hammer home the fact that we really want to build up our community and allow access to data in a way that hasn't been allowed before.
Yeah, and so with us, it's being a cybersecurity company. I mean, I feel very passionately about this mission in general. I've been in the industry for 15 plus years now, and being a defender and understanding how bad cyber attacks can be and how it's growing worse every year. It gives a very clear mission to what we're doing, because we are absolutely trying to help to level the playing field and to give organizations the security posture that they need to have. And this is something that we never stray far from, because you can see stories about attacks on a regular basis that are just becoming more and more horrible. So there have been cyber attacks on hospitals recently. There was a cyber attack on a hospital, so the hospital couldn't even use its equipment and had to divert ambulances to another hospital, and then the patient died on the way to that second hospital. And so whenever I see stories like this, I literally post them in our Slack channel to say, if we ever are unsure of our mission and where we're really trying to go with this, we have perfect evidence right here of the need for it.
What are some mistakes you might have learned along the way earlier in the life cycle of your company? Mistakes and lessons learned that you would feel comfortable sharing with the Power to Fly community?
I think lessons learned for me would be the importance of a team as soon as possible. So, I did it on my own for a while, and I mean, I don't regret it so much, but I think it would have accelerated, the trajectory of the company had I gotten a team established sooner in the journey.
I would say as sort of a corollary to that, and this is more of it, this is an experience from my previous startup, is who's on that team really matters. With the right team, anything is possible. With the wrong team, everything is a struggle. And that's something that I certainly learned the hard way with my last startup. And another is that you start selling the product from day one before you even have anything. Especially if you have an enterprise product, because the sales cycle is super long. And so you need to start initiating those conversations long before the product is ready to ship.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think the other, in the same vein, just delegation, smart delegation, and making sure that as much as possible, everyone on your team is doing what they're best at. And I think the mistake that I made in relation to that is wanting to do it all and wanting to bear, most of the work and not wanting to burn resources elsewhere. But that can really lead to just filling your calendar with things that aren't the most productive. So as much as possible, making sure that you and your team are working together and everyone's swimming in the right lanes and doing what they're really good at, so that you all kind of all boats rise and the company grows in the best, most sort of efficient way.
Great. So hopefully that answers Pamela's question. I combined my question with hers in the chat about what you've learned in the overall startup process. The next question was from Natalie. Her question was, how can you get access to capital for entrepreneurs who have ideas on recycling and organic products that are truly 100% green? I think that's a good question. I think this goes back to what was a prior theme about just doing your homework on your investors and really knowing what their investment thesis are, what type of companies they're interested in generally, and doing that research in Crunchbase, as well as just looking on Twitter and LinkedIn. Online research will be really helpful for that. So I'll answer the question that way. Catherine asked, what communities besides Hearst Lab engage in for founder camaraderie, emotional support, and the motivation to keep going? Hashtag founder life is hard. That's a great question, Catherine. How do you guys do that now that you're out of fundraising, but of course the journey is full of challenges as well as opportunities, and it has its ups and downs? How do you guys approach that?
I think I'm definitely in a part of a few sort of entrepreneurship communities, Slacks, as well as like industry specific CPG and innovation communities. But I think really what keeps me going is the individual like group texts, the smaller concentric circles within them that I can go to for unfiltered advice, and then the other group chats that are totally business free that I can go to when I don't want to talk about work at all, which is rare. So I think now I've established a really nice kind of world of supporters and friends and family and communities around me, where I know when I'm stressed, I go here. When I want to get advice on X, I go here. When I don't want to talk about work, I go here. And just having that support system kind of laid out has been what keeps me going.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, there are a couple groups of founders that I'm a part of. And so that's great for your standard questions. Also, some of the investors have, outside of Hearst Lab, which does a great job with this, but others as well have a similar setup where their portfolio companies can discuss different challenges and solutions that they've been able to come up with based on their experiences. And also for me, I think probably the most helpful people have been other cybersecurity founders who have already gone through all of this, or are a little bit further along than I am, or are at the same stage as I am, but that know, in my case, there's just a lot that's very industry specific. And so being able to discuss that with people who know the ins and outs of it, and have been through this whole scene, and know exactly the shape of the problems that I'm seeing, they have been very helpful, and very insightful, and very supportive.
Marcy, what networks have you tapped into along the way?
So I think there are some great, Slack channels for underrepresented founders. My alumni network of the startup community. Um, and then, like what Dana said, just like some non-business related, your general support network, this can be totally all encompassing and all you ever talk about or think about all the time. But I think it's good to also, because founder burnout is definitely a risk. And so I think it's important to keep some balance in your life and have, a community outside of your work community to be able to support that as well.
All right, so we have time for, I would say, one more question, and I will make it a broad one. If you could go back in time and give yourself one piece of advice going into this entrepreneurial journey, what would that advice be that you would want to share with our audience today?
I think I would say that while you think that your most precious resource is money, it's actually time. And that's what you need to maximize for more than anything else. And granted, the money aspect of it does play a big role in how you can allocate your time. But at the end of the day, for an early stage startup founder, there is more work to do than can be done in a day, every single day. And so it's really important to be able to prioritize. And to Dana's point, sometimes delegating helps with that, and then having the right team makes that possible. And sometimes it's about just figuring out what you can just let slide, because in some cases that's going to be necessary. You just can't do everything, and you have to ruthlessly prioritize. So yeah, I think that would be my big one.
My big point I mentioned before, but I just need to reiterate, is the importance of a team. It's really critical. And I would say form a team with members you really trust, that you can just let them run with the ball and take on their tasks so you can do what you do best. But really critical is a team. And honestly, being a founder, a lot of it is being able to sell. So if you can't sell your idea to other people to join with you on the journey, then, I hate to be blunt, but maybe it's not the right role for you to be a founder, because, some people, very early stage individuals with ideas, say to me, it's impossible for me to get anyone to help with this. That's really part of the process, and it's something you have to do successfully. I think a really critical part of being a founder is being able to sell whatever that is that you're selling, whether it's investing in your company, whether it's a partnership deal, whether it's your product, and that includes the mission to your team. So really critical is gathering and establishing that team as soon as possible.
Cool. Mine is, I think, firstly, would have been exactly what Roselle said around just time being your most precious resource. But another that comes to mind is an investor that we love, who's an investor in our last round, once said to us that they make a decision on investing, a yes decision on investing when everyone on the team gets to an 8 out of 10. Getting to 10 out of 10 is just when there's so much at stake and when you want to get everything right is just oftentimes a fruitless effort. And I've really taken that to heart, and just being an optimizer and being a CEO and a founder, you want everything to be right, you want everything to be perfect, you want to be 10 out of 10 and optimize on every account. But sometimes you don't have the luxury of the time to get there. And if you can get to 8 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 on a big decision as a team, then sometimes that's enough. And you test it, and if it works, great. And if you don't, it doesn't. But I think just remembering that not everything needs to get to a 10 out of 10, and giving yourself the flexibility so you don't drive yourself crazy is an amazing piece of advice that I've really internalized.
There's some good common themes here. Time and perfection is the enemy of good enough. So everyone is very on theme. So this was a really great conversation. So frank, and I hope that everybody watching got a lot out of just hearing about your respective journeys and the lessons you learned along the way. I love for everyone to just tell more about how folks can find out more about you and your businesses as we close out this session. Marcy, do you want to go first?
Yep.
Okay, sure. Our website is silverbills.com. We have a lot of information there, and the way to contact us is right on the website. So feel free to reach out, silverbills.com.
Awesome. Our website is letshighlight.com. If you're a product owner, marketer that wants to get some data back on your products, definitely reach out there. But also, if you're a consumer that loves giving feedback on cool new products coming to market, you can join our community of highlighters at the same website, letshighlight.com.
And our website is keycaliber.com. So anyone in cybersecurity or the cyber risk space, we're happy to chat with you. Or anyone else who wants to talk about the founder journey. And I can also be found on LinkedIn, Roselle Saffron.
That's great. And for anyone interested in Hearst Lab, if you're an early stage female founder, you can check us out at our LinkedIn, which I'm putting in the chat right now. We post there pretty regularly. You can also just go to HearstLab.com and see more about our investment thesis and our portfolio companies. And on LinkedIn, you can find me, Jocelyn Lee. That's it.
Thanks, Jocelyn.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Huge thank you to this amazing panel. It was so great to get to sit in on this conversation. So huge round of applause for all of you ladies.